Obama was having a meeting with someone in one of the rooms in the White House. And he's in the middle of having this meeting with someone who he's met before and had conversations with before. And then they inform him, Mr. President, we just want to let you know this is not who you think you're talking to, and we just wanted to demonstrate how good the special effects makeup is and masks are. Mm-hmm. This is not that person. And he was like, what? Now, I haven't confirmed this. I don't have Obama's number. Right. Well, I'm like, where I can call him up and go, bro, is that real?
Yeah.
But I believe it's real because I've seen up close, like really, like when Tony Hinchcliffe does Kill Tony, sometimes they have makeup artists that dress people up and make them different people. Like mm-hmm. they did a Biden one, and Kyle Dunnigan played Elon Musk, and I didn't even recognize him. I was like, who's this guy? Like, this is weird guy, like acting weird. And then like, that's Dunnigan playing Elon Musk. I was like, no way. Right in front of him, I thought it was just didn't look like Elon Musk. It looked like a weird guy. Mm-hmm. But it didn't look like him. And it looked like a person. It didn't look like a guy in makeup. It didn't look like a mask. It looked like a real person that just was weird looking. I was like, this is crazy.
And look, I've been very harsh on Donald Trump over the last few months, but I think he deserves it. And I think this administration is failing on so many levels, so profoundly, especially given the opportunity that they had. But, you know, I heard him the other day. He called into a Fox News show, and he was like telling the story of the war in Ukraine. And it's like, it just seems like it seems like you learned this on a TV show. Like, can we get some books in your diet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, we really need someone here who's read a book about this, because he kind of had an idea of what he was talking about, but then he got it completely wrong. So he's trying to tell the story, and he's talking about the corruption of the Bidens in Ukraine, and you're like, okay, yes, that is true, but like, there's a whole story here that I don't think you're really understanding. Because he goes, look, this goes back to 2014, and so I'm watching this, and I got like so excited for a minute. Like I was like, yes, it does go back to 2014. Thank you, Donald Trump. And then he goes, it goes back to 2014 when Putin took Crimea, and Obama let him have it. He just let him have it. Never would have happened on my watch, but Obama gave Putin Ukraine. And you're like, no, dude, that's not. Just go back 2 months earlier in that same year. The problem wasn't that Obama gave Putin Ukraine. The problem was that Obama took Ukraine away from Vladimir Putin. As I've played on your show, and you played with Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence has sat right here where I'm sitting and watched Gideon Rose explain to Stephen Colbert exactly what we're doing here. Russia, as Gideon Rose, the editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, said, Russia is Batman. Ukraine is Robin. We are stealing Robin away from Batman. That's what the Maidan Revolution was. That's why the USAID and the NED poured $100 million into this street protest, right? And so they overthrew the government, and then a bunch of the former Ukrainian prime ministers started floating out that we should tear up the Sevastopol lease in Crimea, because, you know, this is Russia's only year-long warm water naval port. They've always had it. This was their agreement. They had like a 50-year lease or something like that. But after the West backed a coup that overthrew the government and put in a pro-Western government, they started talking big, like, well, maybe we'll tear up that lease. And so Vladimir Putin went, no, I'll just take it. And that was like, so anyway, so he goes back to that, doesn't go back a few months earlier, and then misses the entire point. Because like the point is that it's not just like me being like, oh, I wish Donald Trump was into the same books I'm into or something like that. The point is that when you don't get that piece of the chapter, then you miss what's happening right now. So when you're talking about like these, essentially what Donald Trump was saying, the way he was trying to sell it to Zelensky was like, look, do this rare earth minerals deal with us. And this is kind of like a security guarantee. It's not exactly a security guarantee, but if we're in business with you and then Putin's trying to fuck up our business, hey, he's picking a fight with us too. But the whole point is that that's exactly what caused this whole catastrophe. Vladimir Putin and the entire Russian elite have been crystal clear about this, that they go, look, we can tolerate a neutral Ukraine. We could tolerate NATO up to Ukraine. Ukraine is neutral, and then there's Russia. We cannot tolerate Ukraine being a part of America's military alliance. That's a step too far. But every time we try to let them be neutral, Neutral seems like it's never good enough, and that never actually works. So if you're going to come in here and say neutral's not good enough, they're going to be part of the West, then we're going to say, actually, we'll take them as part of Russia instead. Now, he also believes, as he says all the time, which I just think is goofy and un-American, but he also believes that, like, they're not really a real country, and they're kind of historically ours anyway. And, you know, he's got his own views on that. But that's not what the war was about. And everybody, you know, and when I was here, which I was very excited to do, because I'm, you know, a weird romantic and have a dash of autism or something like that. But I was really excited because me and Douglas Murray are going to debate this issue. Right. And I remember when he first goes, the war had nothing to do with Ukrainian entry into NATO. And I was like, okay, well, let me just hit you with 2 points real quick. Number one, the head of the CIA, you know, during all the years of Joe Biden, when he was the ambassador to Russia, he wrote the "Nyet means yet" memo. He literally said that this was all what it was all about, and that Russia didn't want to do this, but they would if we kept pushing Ukrainian entry into NATO, and we did keep pushing it. And then I said the other one was Stoltenberg, who is not anymore, but was the head of NATO while this was happening. And he said that Vladimir Putin sent them in writing a draft treaty that all you have to do is put in writing that you will never bring Ukraine into NATO and I won't invade. And then he bragged that we said no. And then he invaded. But so I said this to Douglas Murray, and I was kind of curious. Like, I was like, what's his response to this going to be? Like, what is he going to say back to? Maybe he's got something I've never heard before that I'm going to have to be like, oh, shit, I got to consider that. And his response was, a libertarian quoting the CIA, I see. And you're like, wait, so that's your pivot, is to I'm a hypocrite somehow, which isn't even hypocrisy. Like, yes, I think the CIA should be abolished. I also think it's relevant when the head of the CIA admits what the war was all about. I don't see that.
Do you think the CIA totally should be abolished? Don't you think we should kind of pay attention to what the fuck is going on in the world, giving a real life perspective, not a utopian perspective, but a real life perspective? There's terrorist groups all over the world plotting shit. Probably a good idea. Yeah.
So what the CIA was originally like conceived of, like essentially being a newspaper for the president, like being like, hey, we get all the real intelligence and we give it to you here.
Yeah.
Yes, I 100% think there's room for intelligence gathering. But what the CIA became is a paramilitary organization that starts wars and overthrows democratically elected governments all around the world.
And occasionally sells coke in the hood.
And occasionally, when they're bored, and maybe like on like a Tuesday, like a 3-day weekend, and then on Tuesday, maybe move some crack into Los Angeles. No, that, I mean, it's a disgrace to a professed free society. I mean, it's look, like which we've also played on the show before, but when Chuck Schumer was on with Rachel Maddow, which is one of the most amazing moments in the history of like corporate media, because what's amazing about it, if you watch like the full thing, is that Rachel Maddow's asking him questions and he's given his Chuck Schumer, you know, political answers to all of them, however you feel about it. It's like they have their spiel. But then she breaks from script and she preemptively apologizes to him. She goes, hey, I'm sorry to just throw this on you right now. This is it was in, I believe, January. It was either December of 16 or January 17. So Donald Trump has beat Hillary Clinton, but he's not president yet. He's president-elect. And so she goes, sorry to throw you off, put you on the spot, but Donald Trump just tweeted this. So she's reading a tweet that he just tweeted live on air to the Senate Majority Leader, or Minority Leader at the time. So she reads of the tweet, and it's him, you know, trashing the CIA or something like that. And then Chuck Schumer just gives like his organic response. There was no script prepared for this. He wasn't planned on being asked this question. She just goes, look, here's Donald Trump talking about the CIA. And Chuck Schumer he goes, I mean, Donald Trump, you want to go with the intelligence agencies? And his exact phrase was, they have 7 ways till Sunday to get back at you.
Yeah.
So good. So and by the way, Rachel Maddow in this moment does not say, pause the tape. What did you just say? Like,
right.
The most powerful Democrat in the Senate just admitted we don't live in a democracy. Just admitted that this whole thing's an illusion, that the president of the United States is not the president of the United States. All our talk about democracy being on the ballot, democracy's been gone for a long time if it ever existed. You just straight up said that the duly elected commander-in-chief and chief executive of the United States of America ain't really the one who's in charge, because you better not insult the CIA, who work for you ostensibly, or supposedly, I should say. you know? And so like that's...
Or they'll get you.
Or they'll get you. Or they'll ruin you. And by the way, they did.
Yeah.
You know, didn't they? And this is the stuff which is very interesting that Tulsi is releasing now, which I don't know whether... You know, I'm kind of past the point of like, it's hard to take a lot of things about Donald Trump seriously to me at this point. You know, flaking on all types of, you know, the Epstein stuff and just a lot of, you know, kind of core things where like, so Donald Trump, at least according to him, they stole the election. You know, I was thinking about this the other day because he was talking about in the same thing that I'm talking about when he called into Fox News. He was talking about the Ukraine war. He said at one point, he goes, the war never would have happened if I was president, which Putin threw him a bone and backed him up on that the other day and said the war wouldn't have happened if Trump was president.
That doesn't...
Yeah, just saying what, you know, he's smart enough to know.
It's a nice thing to say. The guy likes being complimented.
And Putin's smart enough to know that, like, this is how you negotiate with Donald Trump. Yes.
The war would have never started with you,
yeah, right.
my friend.
So that's kind of a silly point. But aside from that, so Donald Trump goes... he goes, it never would have happened if I was president. And then he takes it a step further than what he normally says. And he goes, it wouldn't have even happened if anyone else was president. If we had just had a regular president, this war never would have happened. It's only because Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of America, was president, that's why this happened. But then I'm sitting there as I listen to that and I go, yeah, but dude, didn't you told me that they cheated. Like, you didn't really lose the election in 2020. You've stuck to that story now for many years. So you're saying they cheated. You're making a similar claim here. They overthrew democracy. They installed Joe Biden, and a war where hundreds of thousands, maybe well over 1 million people have died, happened because they cheated the election. Okay, so I'm going to need to know who they is, and I'm going to need to know when we're going to see him perp walked. Like, right. You're the president now. You got your whole... But all of us on some level don't really think they're going to start arresting people over the stolen election of 2020. And, you know, I
don't think they have any evidence.
Yeah, no, that's right. I completely agree. Now,
I think there's a lot of speculation and there's a lot of consideration about mail-in ballots.
Yes.
There's a lot of shenanigans. There's a good record of shenanigans, and there's the reality of any kind of electronics can be hacked.
No, I agree with all of that. I'm just saying, like, once you've made these statements and your administration is in.
Answer.
No, I remember. It was one of the most interesting parts of your podcast with him was, like, when you asked him about that, it was like he really didn't have anything to back it up.
If that was you or if that was me, I mean, if there was some reason why I knew that they did something and I could give you all the facts, I would have that ready for anybody because for 4 fucking years, they've been telling him he's crazy for questioning the election.
Yeah.
So after 4 years, I'd have a fucking tight 10 minutes on the election where I could just rattle off at you and rock your world with it. Like, these are the facts, Jack.
Well, there's a big difference between, you know, speculating and asking some questions and being like, I'm not sure I believe the official story of this. And there's a difference between then being, as a president of the United States, going, this is what happened.
Right.
Like, this was, and if you're going to say that, then you got to give me your theory. Like, really lay it out for me. Like, and he never had that part. But I will say, they kind of pivoted off the Epstein thing into Russiagate, which seemed to be, you know, like designed that there was this this tremendous desire. It's the whole reason Donald Trump's political existence is a thing, is that people are furious about the swamp. They're furious about how corrupt our government is and the profound crimes that the government has committed against the American people, and they want justice for that. And so they pivoted off of Epstein after promising to deliver something on that, and then went, okay, well, how about Russiagate now? So now but I will say, Tulsi Gabbard released a bunch of new documents, and there were some pretty interesting ones there. It wasn't like she just released new stuff where it was like, oh, we already knew all this. Like, there was new stuff in there that we didn't really already know. And she referred it over to the Justice Department. She said in her press conference that we have proof that Obama committed treason. And they've at least sent it to the Justice Department. And from what I understand, there is a grand jury being assembled or something like that. So I don't know. I still, in the deepest part of my soul, go, there's no way. There's no way they're actually going to try to prosecute Obama and Brennan and Clapper and Comey. But
the FBI raided John Bolton's house today.
Yes, I think that's unrelated. But that is an interesting story also.
I mean, it seems like they're doing wild shit. But if they did that with Obama, what was the actual treason? Like, what is she stating is treason?
Well, so now I don't think she said treason. I don't think legally that's technically right. But someone might correct me on that. Maybe it's sedition or something. I don't know. I mean, like, I think treason. I think John Brennan did commit treason when he armed Al Qaeda in Syria, and Obama as well, with the rest of Obama and John Kerry and Brennan. I think that's literally treason, right? Giving aid and comfort to the enemy in a time of war. What Obama and Comey and Clapper did to Donald Trump is they framed him for treason. So what do you call that exactly? Right. Framing the sitting U.S. president? Now, I guess Obama can't be guilty of the sitting U.S. president, but he was guilty of the candidate and the president-elect. So because he was out of there by the time Trump comes in. But what Tulsi Gabbard released that I thought was very interesting, which I had never seen before, and we did, I don't remember, was last year or the year before, but there was one episode that me and you talked a lot about Russiagate and got like pretty deep into it. Right. But what Tulsi released, which I've never seen before, was that there was a consensus amongst the intelligence agencies after the 2016 election. So this is Hillary Clinton's lost, but Barack Obama is still president and Donald Trump is the president-elect. And they had consensus that there was no meaningful interference in the election. And then there is this one meeting with Obama that she points to where this is where the consensus changes. And they had a new threat assessment written that actually we believe Russia interfered in the election, but it was total bullshit.
If you enjoyed today's episode on JRE Plus, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.